afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Clive Behrman, and I'm the Director of Cloud Marketing. As it says on this slide here today, we've got a great webinar about cloud test data management. And to help me present, in fact, they're going to do most of the work, is Julie Lochner, who's the Vice President of our ILM team. Hello, Julie.
Hello, Clive. How are you?
I'm good. And Jay Hill, who's the Director of TDM. Hello, Jay.
Hello, Clive.
We have a jam-packed agenda today, so Julie's going to talk us all through about sandbox and Salesforce test data management challenges. We're going to look at this great new solution. Jay's got a fantastic demo. We're going to talk a bit about packaging and availability, and then we'll come back for some Q&A at the end. So with that very short introduction, let me hand it over to Julie, who can cover the first agenda item there, which is the test data management challenges associated with Salesforce and sandboxes.
Great. Thank you, Clive. So just to get to the punch, right, how do developers create those Salesforce test data sets today? We all know that in order to roll out new functionality and new capability in Salesforce, the best practice is to create a sandbox and do all your development there and then promote it to production. But in order to really complete full, comprehensive tests that are valuable to catch any type of QA issues, you need to have the right set of test data. Well, best practices today are different than what we see are happening in practice. What we find is that a lot of developers are using developer or configuration-only sandboxes with either no data or just a little bit of metadata, or they'll use full sandbox copies where they take all of the information that's in their production environment and they copy it over to their Salesforce sandbox. In either case, both approaches has an issue that's associated with time, cost, and risk, things that we all want to avoid when we're rolling out new sandbox or new Salesforce capabilities. So before I get into the meat of it, this is a very interactive presentation, and I'm about to open up this poll. So just to get a sentiment from the audience, how many full Salesforce sandbox do you have? Now, we know that so you'll notice that the poll box has shown up on the right-hand side there. So go ahead and select one of your answers. We'll give you about 15, 30 seconds or so. So if you weren't paying attention and you are, multitasking, please participate in this audience poll so that we can provide a very interactive session today. So we got 10 more seconds to get your answers in. And again, we appreciate your participation. And we have 3, 2, 1, and we have all of our results in. So let me go ahead and post the results. Let's see, share, apply. What you'll notice is that most attendees have selected at least 33%, and tell me if you guys can see those. 33% or a third of our audience has said they create 1 to 2 full sandboxes, and there's a few 13% or so that say they create 3 to 5 full sandboxes. So Jay, you've been speaking with a lot of our customers who are creating these Salesforce environments. Is that typical or average, or how does that jive with what we're seeing?
Yeah, thanks, Julie. Yeah, you're right. I've spoken with some analysts and customers as well, and this is pretty much in line. It's typically the 1 to 2 full-size copies are included or negotiated in the license agreement, with Salesforce, as well as sometimes then up to that next bucket there, that 3 to 5. So that looks about right for the full-size copies that we're seeing out there. So it's very similar that we see in industry.
Okay, good. And as well as I do that when you create those sandbox environments, if you don't use full copies, you introduce some risks, right? For example, if you don't have the perfect test data set, you could be testing capability without the right information. If you have full copies of production information, you might be copying sensitive information to your sandbox environment, which means you're pretty much exposing a potential data breach or a risk of a data breach, right? So really having the right test data is a catch-22. You want to have production-like data, but you don't want, so that you maximize your testing coverage, but you don't want to expose any sensitive information. So those are some of the challenges, but there's a cost associated with those sandboxes, right? We're going to talk about this in a second, Jay, but additional Salesforce full copy sandboxes does cost about 15% of net subscription. So there's an element there that it's a fixed cost. But if you're using manual scripts to create those data sets, there's time associated with that, loss of productivity, and also if you have sensitive information in there, you really do need to protect data privacy. So if you're in a very regulated industry and you are creating these sandbox environments from production, and you may even have contractors or consultants conducting your test sets, might be exposing or violating your data privacy regulations. Informatica recently announced our cloud test data management offering to address all of these challenges. It's a combination of two industry-leading technology from Informatica, data masking and data subsetting. So essentially what we're doing is addressing the challenges that we talked about by reducing cost and risk, by creating test data subsets. So rather than creating full copies, which could cost money and consume developers' time, we create automatically these test data subsets that are purpose-built for the test that you're going to be conducting. And while we do that, if you're selecting data from production, we'll mask that sensitive data so that when the data lands in those sandboxes, we have obscured or obfuscated any sensitive information. But the important part is that we've retained the look and feel of that data. So the pattern is preserved, the look and feel looks just like it did in production, but all of the sensitive information is completely protected. So when you combine subsetting and masking, that's what we're calling cloud test data management, and it's all powered by our cloud information management capability. So let's go to our second poll here. Let me open the poll. So again, thank you for your participation in the first poll. So based on what we just discussed, what Salesforce testing and data security approaches have you tried? So in this poll, you can select multiple options. The first one is you copy production data to sandboxes, so that's very common practice. The second option is create dummy data or use sandbox developer data. I know that I've used that when I've created the demonstrations, but is that something that you guys use? Do you just use empty sandboxes? Do you have manual scripting and processes? Haven't you tried anything yet, or you don't want to tell us? Go ahead and select the right answer that makes sense. The poll is going to be open for just a few seconds more. And again, we're just about done, so I'll close the poll, and then I'll post the results. And what you will see is that the majority of the attendees said they copy production data, or they've created dummy data or used sandbox developer data, which is, Jay, I think in all of our interviews with customers, that has been a common practice. Would you agree?
Yeah, exactly. It's again, this looks pretty similar to what we've seen too. You either do the full production copies, or if not, then you need to somehow get data in there. So it's sort of a catch-22, and like you show here on the ROI calculation. This is working with Informatica IT, and they're a typical IT shop where it's hybrid IT, where we're utilizing a lot of on-premise software as well as SaaS applications in the cloud. So as far as with our organization and all too, we've identified there's quite a bit of cost savings. There's in general, if you're not going to use those full production copies, you need to somehow get test data over there to those developers or testers. And like Julie, like you mentioned, for the demonstrations and all, like what I'll show, you can just use kind of the dummied up data that you can get with developer licenses, or you can enter in some data, but that's not good enough for real production testing before you promote configuration changes into production. So it's kind of a catch-22. So as far as our own internal analysis, just to see as far as the reduced development costs, there are your man hours of people that are having to respond to create the scripts, to call the appropriate APIs, for Salesforce to populate data in these sandboxes, and there's a cost around that. In addition, whether you can now populate and respond to enough developer requests or not, or if you're not able to produce information within the right time, then developers do not have the data they need. And of course, there's going to be some standard rework of moving data into QA or production doesn't quite work out right, so there's a lot of rework time. And then the final bucket really is just the data breach, and this again is the catch-22, that if you do move production data into your developer configuration sandboxes or the full production copy, you now have personally identifiable information or other types of perhaps industry or organization confidential information that's there. So there is a data breach cost that's sitting out there on the books that the organization is at risk in case some insider or outsider person does get access to that sensitive data. And we've looking at industry average for risks of exposing sensitive data, we're able to calculate a relatively conservative number to come up with an overall ROI.
So, I mean, this is looking at our own backyard, right? I mean, there's no better place to validate the value proposition than within your own IT organization. But this is interesting, Jay, because we're not a very large Salesforce deployment. I mean, our system compared to some of the larger organizations that we've interviewed, I mean, this is not huge, right? So just the fact that we're creating 70 developer configuration only sandboxes per year. So that doesn't mean that we have 70 at a time. It just means over the course of the year and the number of point releases that we have, there's at least 70 times that we create these environments. But the breach cost avoid, I mean, some people will argue that that's a difficult number to stand behind. And, Gartner, I think even the Ponemon Institute is another one, both put a number between $150 and $180 per record of what it would cost if you had a breach. So one way to look at it, and I think this is the way our IT guys looked at it, is they looked at the number of records that had our customer data in it, and that by contract we're not allowed to share it or expose it based on obligations, from legal obligations. So if we breach those, they actually had a number that said, okay, it's this number of records times the cost per record, and that's what we would be fined. So a lot of times when you create these ROI calculations, it really depends on the legality. I mean, no one likes to think about a breach, but if you don't, then you're kind of missing a huge opportunity to prevent one. So I think it's obviously a great benefit over a course of a couple of years for the size of our environment. But Jay, I mean, the best way to talk about technology or solution is to show it. So it would be great if you could take us through a demonstration. Let me turn over the presentation to you and show us the goods.
All right, very good. It's transferring over to me. Give me 1 second.
It's interesting looking at these results. There were a few people that use empty sandboxes or manual. 20% said they're using manual scripting. And I think across the board, if you look at the Informatica cloud platform, the two things that stand out is, avoiding scripting, right? Being able to do something using point and click. You don't have to do manual scripting, something that you can reuse, so that reusability. I love what you're going to show here. But, when you use an empty sandbox, the risk there is you don't have valid test data. And we're finding over and over again that people are, releasing functionality that's never really been tested with, valid test data. So we see that a lot.
All right, very good. So, Julie, can you confirm you'd see my desktop?
Yep, see it right now. Great, thank you.
All right, very good. All right, so the scenario here is, like we had set up before, is that I'm playing the role right now as a developer or configurator. I want to maybe extend the contacts object or cases object, add some new custom fields, maybe add some new relationships. I just requested, to get a Salesforce sandbox, so that's the one I'm logged into here. So let's do a quick validation, for contacts.
So you're using the demo or developer sandbox that you get from Salesforce, correct? This is
Yeah, this is the developer, the kind of license which has mocked up dummy data and all. But in this case, I've went out and cleaned up the contacts and cases to sort of emulate like one would get if you did a configuration or develop a copy. So now I have all of the configuration in place, but no data.
Got it.
So I've got no contacts and no cases. And me as this developer, that's not good. I'm not able to extend to the objects or test them at all without any data. So I know that we also have a production instance. So let's go take a quick look at that. So in this case now, I'll switch roles. So now I'm more of the internal IT folks that do have access to the Salesforce production instance. So I'm just logged on as a different user, but in a different instance as well. So those of you that are familiar with the standard Salesforce developer license, you'll notice these are all kind of the standard delivered objects. But just go with us for now on this, where assume this is your organization where you do have contacts and cases in there and other information. So let's take a look at the first or second contact here. And as you know, there's lots of information, including lots of sensitive information, such as the phone number, the mobile phone number, fax, even email addresses, address information, and all of this. We need this, IT organizations to, respond to your customers and all of that, but you also have a legal obligation to ensure this information is held sensitive. So if we are to now populate and extract this data out of this production environment and put it into a sandbox organization, we're now giving this sensitive data to developers, testers, trainers that do need access to it, but they likely don't need actually access to the real information.
I mean, especially if you consider, Jay, especially if you consider this kind of information, what if it's celebrity data or if it's patient information, right? So there's different classes of sensitivity that's placed on this data, right?
Oh, absolutely. And then when you're in the production organization, you will at least have production level access controls and all that of who can get access to what. Mm-hmm. But once you're in the sandbox, my goodness, who knows what type of classified or confidential or just whether it's media or other type of information you don't want to be giving out. All right, so now also we see that one of the powers of Salesforce is the ability to relate objects to one another, whether it is either master detail records or partner type arrangements. So in this case, there's a link between the cases and the contacts. So we see in this particular case, the contact, there are two different cases here, and I can drive into those cases as well. So if I am going to move data from this production organization over to the sandbox, I want to ensure that I have not just the contacts, but their related cases. And that's an important aspect and one of the main features of the data movement that's part of this test data management new application that you're about to see. Okay, so now we've kind of set the stage. The sandbox environment has no data. Production environment has great data. I don't want to contact Salesforce to get an additional full-size copy, so I need to populate these configuration or development sandboxes. So I've logged on to the Informatica Cloud. And those of you that are not familiar with Informatica Cloud, there's lots of other services that exist out here, like data synchronization, contact validation. In this case, we'll go to the Test Data Management Data Masking Service. So right now, what we'll take a look at is I have what are called tasks. I have a couple that are already set up, and you can think of a task as really just your plan or the job of what you want to execute. In this case, the developer had asked me, the IT organization, to please populate the sandbox with contact and case information. So I go through this nice wizard of step-by-step process of just filling out this information. And what I'll do on this first one, it's basic details where I give this task a name and a description. And then I'll just move along from next to next and keep filling out the different details and eventually schedule this job. So on the source side, you need to create the connection information. So in this case, I want to choose the Salesforce production environment. And the developer had requested of me to send cases and contacts to the target environment. So I've already added these. If you want to add, additional objects, you'd simply, click on the row that you want, like add. In this case, for case, I'll add back the contact for there. And I get it exactly how I wanted this again. And you can keep adding more and more. So if I wanted to then push owner or additional objects, I can do that as well. But right now, this is what was requested, so I'll just keep it as is. So I'll go ahead to the target. And for here, for Salesforce, the only real option is to pick the, the target environment. So far so good, pretty straightforward. And now for the subsetting side of things, what I need to do is specify a filter criteria. So what I'll do here is I'll say for the cases, actually for the contacts, I'll do a filter by last name, and I'll say it's equal to a bar. So that was the user that I had in there. So I can go ahead, or the contact information that I want to utilize, and press OK. And then for the masking, what I can do, I'll go to the next tab here. Okay, so here on the contacts, so I have the same setup. I have the contacts and cases, and I have the birth dates. So all different sorts of sensitive information. So like for birth dates, there's some options for some of the rules we have set up. In this case, we can blur the dates, and you give it a lower range, for 10 years lower or higher. So maybe we do want to just make everybody's birth date, a little bit, younger.
I mean, age is definitely one of those sensitive fields, right?
Yeah, absolutely, right. People would not like giving that one away. Other sensitive information might be like the email address, and we have a basic email address, and you also could do something more advanced. So as you see, it's just kind of a simple, click and configure for the email address. Even the advanced one is pretty straightforward. You pick the first name and maybe a character. The delimiter, we'll do a dot followed by the last name, and maybe 10 characters for the last name at company.com. So I could leave it as that, or right now just use the more simple one, which in this case all it does is generate random characters at domain random characters. So that way you're ensured that you're not going to email someone by mistake. So for faxes and phone numbers, you just pick an appropriate masking rule that we have out of the box, like a phone number. For first names and last names, we have some kind of standard out-of-the-box rules. So you can pick the substitution male name or just substitution name across the board, however you want to do this. And let's see if there's any others down here, like address information, like the street. We'll do a substitution for the street and phone number. All right, so once I have that all scheduled, so you can kind of take your time, fill out a little bit more of these. But so far, pretty straightforward, very simple. I just go on to the next tab, and then I'll actually then save and run this. So go ahead and click this off. This takes me into a nice little overview screen here. I'll just do some refreshes. This will take just a few seconds. So right now what it's doing is we're extracting data out of that production Salesforce organization. And then there we go. So very good. So we have 3 rows. That is what we expected since I took one contact and then the related 2 cases. So now let's take one more look over here to the target environment. So again, I'm back in the sandbox Salesforce organization. I'll press go. Okay, so great. I do now have one contact which matches to my filter criteria. The name was obviously changed. So this was not Tim Barr or the Bond person. So in the top here, then we have the phone numbers. So I did mask the phone, but not the mobile. So if we wanted to do this again, I need to make sure that I do mask the mobile phone number. Fax is masked. And then as I mentioned, the email rule, we decided to use more of the standard one. So this is kind of nice. So it's pretty obvious that this is not a valid email address. Or you could make it look a little bit more valid if you like. All right, so that's all well and good. So we've established one of the the major concerns as far as moving production data, we have now masked it or desensitized it before we move it into the sandbox. But in addition, we've also moved over related data. So this is also very important because we could have just moved contacts by themselves and cases by themselves, and all of you that are on the call that know about your migrations to Salesforce and whatnot, it's not an easy thing to do. You need to put in original IDs and relink these together with additional relationship columns and whatnot. But we're able to do that via the Salesforce APIs that are available to us to relink these objects together. So this adds a lot of value for that developer or tester that now they not only have the data they requested for the main object, but all of the related objects. So of course I can drill right into the cases as well, validate the data is here. So if I just wanted to look even from the cases view, I could see that there were only two cases that were brought over. And I didn't go through the cases and set up any masking rules, but I could have done that as well.
No, but one thing you point out, though, is that when you click on the case, the contact information is consistently masked when you present it in the case as well. So I think the benefit of having that reconciliation between the case and the contact means that it's you're protecting the information that you've decided to, no matter what view you're looking at, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. So, I mean, one of the powers and nice features of Salesforce is this ability to relate objects to one another, and that is what the developer or configurator is expecting when they're about to test and create new objects. That you bring this data over, they better be related to one another.
Yeah, you don't want to create more tests for them to have to conduct after the fact, right?
Right, exactly.
Great. That's an excellent demonstration. Thank you, Jay.
You're welcome.
So now that we've seen how this works in action, the way that we've packaged the technology is really in a couple different ways. The first one is, you saw the middle column there. It says Cloud TDM Standard Edition or Cloud Test Data Management Standard Edition. That's what we are releasing now. It's available now. It is available. It provides that masking capability. It provides that subsetting capability. You also notice that when Jay created those subsets, we actually did what's called in-stream masking, so that we mask the data when you go from source to target. You also have the ability to mask the data in place, which in the case if you had already created a sandbox environment and you didn't want to go back and reinsert new records, you could go into an existing sandbox environment and mask the data in place. We do provide 2 connectors as part of the standard edition subscription process. And typically what you would have is you would have a connector to your production sandbox and then a production Salesforce environment and then a connection to your sandbox. So each one of those connections is considered a connector. We also provide available as well today is a free version of the cloud data masking solution. So in this case, it provides that masking, but instead of having unlimited usage from a row perspective, we do provide it as a freemium product. It limits up to 10,000 rows per day or maximum of 3,000 rows per month, and that's calculated in aggregate. It's available on our Cloud Test Data Management website. If you go to the landing page there, you can click on the data masking, and it says try it for free. Now, if you have, when we talked about the standard edition, one of the capabilities that you saw today was that we went from Salesforce.com to Salesforce.com. So Salesforce to Salesforce, or what we call homogeneous source and target environments. Let's say you start to need the secure test data management or secure test data sets for a variety of sources and targets, including on-premises and off platforms, and you need more of an enterprise platform, then we have the Test Data Management Enterprise Edition. So with that technology comes the 2 connectors, but you can have unlimited number of connections. So for example, if you had an Oracle and a SQL Server database or multiple environments that span multiple systems that you wanted to create integrated test data set that would work from, through a data integration process from your source to target or maybe your integrated environments, then you probably need a more enterprise environment where you can do custom masking rules. You might have pre and post rules for subsetting. So all that capability is provided with the full-blown Enterprise Edition. So we have one more poll. So I'm going to ask you guys to go ahead and let us know what your plans are to try a Salesforce test data management solution, whether it's in the next 3 months, the next 6 months, maybe within the next year. Maybe this is the first time you've ever heard of it and you're just exploring your options, or you have no plans yet. We'd love to hear where you are in evaluating your test data management solutions. And while that poll is open, we have a few options or opportunities for you for listening to this webinar today. If you're interested in trying a 3-month free trial for the Cloud Test Data Management solution, contact us today. In fact, if you go to the informaticacloud.com landing page, there's a button right there that says Contact Us. Send us an email. Let us know a little bit about you and your environment, and we'll give you a 3-month trial. If you saw something really cool today and you want to share it with your colleagues or your boss, there's this demonstration that Jay just presented. We've created a YouTube version of it. So if you have that link there, go ahead and send that to your colleague. And it's an excellent demonstration. It's really to the point. It shows pretty much what Jay shared today. Now, if you don't have the need to create those subsets, but you just want to try the data masking, dip your toe in the water, see if it's something that will help you eliminate the risk of a data breach, we do have that free data masking product. Again, if you go to the informatica.cloud and products, there's a data masking page, and there's a little button on there that says, try data masking for free. So go ahead and, take a walk through the park with our technology. We're pretty excited about it. As you saw, it's fairly straightforward to use. That wizard-driven approach, no coding. For the Salesforce developers, knowing that the subset and math objects are linked and it has that reconciliation in there really makes that data usable. So with that, we're going to open up our Q&A. So Clive, I noticed that there are several questions in the Q&A panel. Did you want to take us through those and we can tackle them one by one?
Did you want to answer your poll first?
Well, it looks like we still have a few folks that are exploring their options, so that's great. I mean, I think the timing on this presentation is very optimal, and of course, we just released the product, so we're glad to hear that you're looking at it. And then there's a few in there that are actually looking to do something in the shorter time frame. So if you are looking to do something in the shorter time frame, then absolutely, take a test drive with the 3-month trial for sure.
I can tell folks were listening because there's a range of questions across the board. So
good.
How about for folks that already have Informatica Cloud today, is this data masking wizard an add-on?
Sure. So yes, if you have Informatica Cloud today, you can leverage the same login information that you have today. And when you go to your applications, it's one of the drop-down boxes that's available for you to add on. So, Jay, did you want to add anything to that question?
No, just like you mentioned, it's another application. So as soon as you're licensed for it, then it just shows up, and it's for those of you that are Informatica Cloud users already. I mean, it's really, if you're going to use it immediately, and it's going to take no time at all just to kind of go through the task and set up some data masking and subset filters.
Well, and especially if you have the agent already downloaded for doing Salesforce integration, you can leverage the same agent, correct?
Yeah, you leverage the same agent. It's whatever comes in. That when you do upgrade to the release 17, and then subsequent R18, you'll get all of the required configuration or execution will be already pushed down to that agent. Yeah, so you won't need anything extra.
And one of the things that we did with the packaging is you notice we added the 2 connectors. So if you've already licensed connectors for Salesforce for a production environment, you can use that connector. That means you have 2 more. So if you had licensed 1 production Salesforce environment with the test data management solution, you can add 2 sandbox environments. So you can reuse those connectors.
We've got a couple of questions about custom objects. So one with how does it handle custom objects, and another guest asked, I didn't hear anything about custom objects or custom relationships. So does it work with custom objects and custom relationships?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and take that, yeah.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so so what we saw was just kind of the basic developer license that I showed there, and that was all kind of the standard objects. But most certainly, we handled both custom fields on standard objects or custom objects themselves. They would just show up in the selection criteria for the objects, and the data would move from source to target. So no big deal there. And regardless, there was another question kind of related, so I'll go ahead and answer that as well, as far as how we relate the objects together, is that you do need to move over the relationship IDs or the keys actually to the Salesforce objects, whether it's a standard object or a custom object. They're all about these relationship IDs. So when we do create the new objects, whether it's standard or custom on the target, Salesforce will create the new IDs. So what we do is keep track of the new and the old, and as we're moving the objects over, like the case that I showed, contacts and then their associated cases, then we just relink those objects together to ensure that we do have the appropriate new relationship IDs that Salesforce has established.
And that's anticipated. That's the type of functionality that's anticipated when you want to roll out a new test case, correct, Jay?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just that if you don't, the expected behavior of the developer, whoever wants their objects populated, again, whether it's standard or custom, is that they need the relationships to all the other objects. Yes, so that is one of the very nice features we put in place here, is to reestablish those relationships, and that is the desired and expected result.
Yeah, that seems to me like that can just save a ton of custom work. Just, as you know, in some of the research that we've done, I think it's something like 30 to 40% of testers' time is setting up the test data. So a lot of it has to do with this relationship and reconciliation, especially with custom stuff. So it sounds like this is a huge value add.
What type of environment do we put the test data in? For example, we have more than 5,000 records for tests, which exceeds a developer org. So any thoughts or any comments on that?
Sure, yeah, so exactly. So the configuration only or developer sandbox environment, so the developer can have up to 10 megabytes of records, configuration only up to 500 megabytes. So there are some built-in limitations there, and that's absolutely then what the whole subsetting and filtering aspect gives you, is that you want to be precise on that and pick a good number of records. Developers and testers and trainers, for that matter, don't need hundreds of millions or billions of records. Typically, they just need some, and they're screaming and crying, for good data. So what you do is you just put in those decent filters, with either, in this case, in my example, is with the last name, but you can put in really small filter criteria. Let's say to make it very discriminating, only a couple of records, and if that's not enough, then open up the filter criteria and bring over a few more records. Or you can kind of go the other way, and if you put in more than required, then you actually won't be able to move that data over. So probably best practice really is just pick very discrete filter criteria, so it's going to have, let's say, 10 opportunities or so, and all of the related
you can put specific numbers on there, right, Jay? Like you can say just select 10 contacts and the related objects. So you can put finite record counts in there too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Put finite record counts or even percents. Yeah, so I mean, all of that is available. Yeah.
There was one question that came in there about how about the owners of the records? Are the users also created in the target sandbox?
Right, yeah. That's a good one. As far as, if you noticed on the demonstration, there you set up the connection, for the target environment. On that connection then is the specific user ID. So as you move the data, all the records are logged under that one connection user ID. So in this case, it was the sandbox user. And what we do too is that as far as even the logs of the changed values is that for the sensitive data, now that's all turned off, so you won't see, let's say, somebody's first name changing to another first name. So all that logging is off on the records that we do change. As far as the user IDs, no, we don't copy the owners or the users over. We're assuming then the developer or whoever is in that environment, that's all they need. So we don't move over the owners or user IDs, at least by default.
We have one. Does it create any drag on the production instance? Is it recommended to perform sort of the data masking off hours?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, in this case, right, yeah. Since there are those limitations on the configuration only and development sandboxes, this is a relatively small amount of data that you would be moving, from the production organization. So no, there's no real concern, as far as affecting that production instance. I mean, you're going to have, Salesforce itself, my goodness, multi-tenant environment with who knows how many users and organizations they have now, but the concurrency they put in place already is phenomenal. So you're not going to affect the Salesforce production. And even for the Informatica cloud, for that matter, I mean, it's highly scalable and multi-tenant environment as well. So no worries whatsoever on either of the technologies.
Yeah, I think I just would add to that too, in that this is a purpose-built technology or tool for creating subsets. So, you also, with the test data management capability, you have the option. You don't have to mask. You can skip and not mask any data. But the benefit of using the purpose-built tool for subsetting is you also get the option to create these filters, for example, sampling or a specific number of records. You can tie multiple subsets together. So again, I think that there's a benefit to doing the 3-month trial and make sure that you have the right tool for the right job.
It's actually only one thing for me to do, really, is to wrap up. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Jay, for providing answers. And to thank everybody for joining us today on what was a really, really great webinar. So thank you all.
Thank you, Clive.